friends, I'm Rick, and this is your seat at the table, and over here in the corner is a little Missy, and what we are looking at is the supplemental for the Wars of Reaving Supplemental from Catalyst Games, a clan sourcebook. Now, I had mixed feelings on it when I first looked at it, and I hadn't printed it out yet, let alone read anything, and I thought, alright, whatever. And then I printed it out. Then it sat on my shelf. There's a stack, probably 10 deep of PDFs out there that are currently printed but have yet to be bound up, let alone read. And I still got about 6 or 8 out there that are bound and still have yet to be read. And then I have just printed some more, and there's still more in my my wish list, including the Wars of Reaving. Now, the Wars of Reaving sourcebook is I have to see if I can find a PDF copy of it. I don't think I can buy an actual copy, physical copy of it. I'm really looking forward to doing it. I had considered doing a different video on the Bastion clans and what they're calling the Homeworld clans, that I'm guessing, or that's what the attempt, somebody called them that anyway, or they call it themselves. And then I realized maybe I better hold off on doing that until I've actually read the full source book on the Wars of Reaving, because there's so much I'm sure I'm missing. But it also penned a lot of things that it really, I just say I got excited by reading this, and I've actually postponed doing the video on this for a few weeks. Went back and I've reread what's in here a few times, just because there's so much for many of us when it comes to being unknown. There's so for example, what happened to the surviving, what happened to the clans back home? A, didn't come to the inner sphere, and B, never came to the inner sphere. And I've hit and miss, and a lot of it's just kind of dismissive. Well, they don't matter anymore, and that kind of stuff. And I always find that as inconvenient at best, because I want to know why that is. How is it they've been diminished in such a way? And of course, I found some stuff that was very interesting. A couple surprises I wasn't expecting, and a couple head scratchers while I'm thinking, really? What the hell is it? What the hell? What the hell? All right. So we're looking at this. Take a look at this. Wars of Reaving Supplemental. So we have a looking back. We have a breakdown of their society before they got obliterated. Then we got a breakdown of some bandit case and some example of their version of pirates. The Tannis system, which was a key to some of the tracks or scenario events and stuff that go on, which is what the bulk of this thing is about anyway, which is fine. And then we get into the beginnings of my view of what's going on back in the clan homeworlds. And so we get political boundaries. We get a brief introduction to the 4 surviving clans back home: the Clan Cobra, the Clan Coyote, Clan Star Adder, and the new Clan Stone Lion. And then we get some stuff on tactics in various groups and some of their interactions with each other, and then you go into a bunch of the rest of the book. All right. So, in a nutshell, what I take away from this is the inner sphere invasion of the clan homeworlds came as such a shock to the majority of the clan leadership who didn't go to the inner sphere, that their minds basically broke. They couldn't cope with the facts that the inner sphere was not on its last breath, and that it actually had more than sufficient means to bring the fight to clans. It also put lie to all the stuff that they basically had been spoon-fed since in their civicos on how things are supposed to work. And this was horrifically shocking. Then we see this I don't want to know what else to call it, but some kind of blood frenzy. So there's these Wars of Reaving, for example, turns into a blood frenzy. And there's obviously still missing a lot of information. I'm not sure exactly why and how the damn War of Reaving started. I'm getting a more idea of the why, but not the how and the exact when, which I suspect that's why I want the Wars of Reaving source book, because it'll tell me that information. It'll give me some information that I'm kind of, low on. The total destruction of several clans just seems, the way they were, it's like a lot of the stuff that came out of the Dark Ages. It just seems like it was on a whim. and not well thought out. We see the dismantling of the mandrills and Clan Burrick. Is that a clan? They're gone anyway. And the blood spirits, which completely surprised me. I mean, I was surprised the blood spirits were as weak as they were. I mean, I knew they were small, but they weren't nearly as potent as I thought they ought to be. B, they were almost inconsequential. What's the point of having them? They were a placeholder, a name holder, and that was about it, which is sad because there's so much possibility there. And I had always thought, when it's this argument about the clan adders, star adders were the ones who basically dominate what's left of the home clans, and for all intents and purposes, that means there's no real competition. Well, in an environment created by the Kerensky philosophy, that's the whole core kernel of what makes the clan warrior case what it is, this is extremely detrimental to their long-term existence. In the long term. So the fact that they were smart enough, the cons at the time were smart enough to realize that 3 home clans weren't going to cut it. So they added 4th by taking the survivors of the Hell Horses that didn't go to the Inner Sphere and allow them to form, or force them to form, the clan Stone Lions. And of all the years, the hundreds of years of the clan's history, only in the last 30 or 40 have they ever gone to the extreme point of actually forming a new clan. They have destroyed old clans, yes, they've abjured several of them, as we all well know. But to actually create one, it was probably pretty smart on somebody's part there, because it left some open windows that they didn't have. So also their bastion defense. Now there's some advantages and disadvantages to how this is playing out for the home clans. So for a region of space that once upon a time held 20 clans and then whittled down to 16 clans right about the time of the Inner Sphere invasion, the space was still limited. The clans were not inclined to go on a large scale exploration and colonization effort, because they didn't want, in truth, they don't want a reality. They don't want a population like the Inner Sphere. They don't want the vast size. They never did, because it makes it impossible, or damn near impossible, to control completely as the clans like to think they control things. So the removal of most of the clans to the Inner Sphere, and or the destruction of a number of clans, means that all that space that was originally contested by all these other clans was up for grabs. So for the remaining 4 clans back in the clan space, this was a massive boon to them. They all 4 should have gained extensive resources and manufacturing capability. Because it's never been, one of the downsides of Battletech has always been its dearth of numbers, of hard fact numbers. We have no actual clue as to how big the population of the Kerensky cluster is and clan space is. We have some ballpark numbers to go from, and they're nowhere. They don't even, one small house in the Inner Sphere has much more population than the entire clan space combined. So that said, the remaining clans suddenly became the possessors of a huge amount of resources and intentions. So like factories and production facilities and farms and all this other stuff. It's also given that a significant portion of the clan's non-warrior case survived and remained, and were then taken over and subjugated by these surviving clans. So there's no, let's just talk about the entire clan Coast Bear packing up every last bit, kit, and caboodle and hauling off to the Inner Sphere. The sheer mass of the exodus for that makes me think that was not as complete as they want to pretend. Yes, the Ghost Bears built a couple really big ships to move a lot of stuff. They also contracted the Diamond Shark and I think the Snow Ravens to get their hands on even more shipping, so they could move as much material and people as possible. But if you look at a projection of a clan that has control over several planets and then possibly the a dozen others, either in conjunction or as outposts for resource material. The sheer numbers of population should have been the tens, if not hundreds of millions of people. And you're not going to transplant or transfer tens of millions of people from the depths of the of where clan space is back to the inner sphere. There ain't enough shipping everywhere combined to do this, let alone remove the supplies needed to keep that many people alive for the 9 months or whatever it took to make that transition from the clan space to the inner sphere. And then, that's not including all the kit and caboodle. So the mechs, the tanks, the vehicles, the notepads, the spare parts, the underwear, everything that needs to be packed up and hauled off too needs space on ships. There's just not enough ships, period, for that extensive of a total mass movement to have occurred. So most of these clans left significant forces behind, or significant resources and people sources behind, is what I'm getting at. And the Bastion clans would have great advantages there. The downside for them, though, in a lot of aspects, though, is the fact that they now have, there's only 4 of them. And Coyote's not in good shape, and the Stone Lions are green behind the ears by every measure of the stick. This is why clan adders, the star adders, are the top dog in back home, because there's no real competition to them. The only thing that allows the other 3 clans to even flourish is the very fact that the clans, including the star adders, heavily utilize the clan system of Vichal. And otherwise there would be only 1 clan back home, and the rest would be dead or buried. I mean, that's just because attrition. They had to have those checks and balances, as well as those societal moral roadblocks in place for the entire existence of the clans to have existed and thrived as well as they did. Because then you create an entire society that's warriors down. The warrior society, and everything is about the warrior. 250 years they didn't eradicate majority of each other. That's a miracle. I'm just being honest. It's a miracle that the clans didn't obliterate each other over time. And they still could. Can only be 1 clan. It can only be the clan, right? Well, that means that everybody else becomes subjects of thereof. And it goes against everything that the clans were taught or bred into them. It just is what it is. So that's a distinct disadvantage. There's also a terrible disconnect going on here. By forcing an isolation and determined to keep everybody out, the Bastion clans are risking triggering the very thing that they're trying to avoid. I'm not saying it's likely to happen anytime soon. That's a hell of a trip out there. And for the most part, the Inner Sphere is just content to leave them do their business out there. I think it's a mistake not to keep eyes on them, and I suspect some of the house intelligence services are striving to do that as best they can, considering the vast distances involved. But isolation in and of itself is also a problem, because it also stifles innovation. And that's something that even the clans acknowledged when they had to deal with the society, that they purposely hamstring themselves so they can maintain their system. Their system works only because they make sure it works. Kind of what I'm getting at. So isolating themselves means that they also isolate themselves from any kind of serious innovation and group beneficial inspiration. Well, they say, well, we have 4 clans. Yes, you have 4 clans. But for all intents and purposes on paper, you have a single clan. The rest are just basically operating at the whims of the Star Adders. And this is dangerous for the Star Adders leadership, because over time they can become accustomed to having total dominance in their area of space. And when that changes, conflict will ensue, and potentially extremely violent and deadly conflict. Not necessarily a good thing. They're also cutting themselves off from any kind of assistance and or personal knowledge, I guess, from the Inner Sphere. One of the biggest problems the clans have always had is the fact that their whole sole purpose existing is for the warriors, the warrior class, and so the warriors can fight and do what they did. And that's to the detriment as the clans as a whole, because how much of their research base was ignored. The inner sphere was, new innovations were few and far in between because it was hard enough to maintain the innovations they have, but they were still occurring. This doesn't occur in a closed environment unless it's weapon related. That means a whole lot of other scenarios that they've really handicapped themselves, because how many better manufacturing techniques and agricultural improvements and resource gathering and management improvements could they have applied and improved everything, including their own production capabilities and the equipment that they produce, the qualities, all this stuff can go up. But if you don't make any effort to invest in any of that stuff, that's never going to happen. And part of what the clan's failure is that system. The very system that they depend on screwed them over. I'm just being honest here. It did. They were totally unprepared for the to the knife, to the hilt style of combat that the inner sphere is quite capable of waging on this grand scale. Oh, they ain't gonna take us. Ain't gonna happen. So anyway, I really enjoyed this book, and for such a little book, there's a lot of decent information in there, especially when I'm missing a huge block of my own knowledge of the lore. So I hope to find the Wars of Reaving. I need to go through the list of PDFs that was generously given to see if it's in there, and I haven't come across it yet. If not, then I'll have to go and see what they want. Catalyst wants one. I mean, I hate paying full price for PDFs from Catalyst, because no offense, Catalyst, but you're greedy fucks. You are. You're charging almost as much for the printed for a digital version of something that we would prefer a hardback version of. It should be less than that. It should be a quarter of the price of a hardback, in my opinion. I would have no problem spending $10 for a $30 book, a $10 PDF of a $30 book. But I'll be damned if I'm spending $20 for a $30 book. I just can't bring myself to do it. Anyhow, I'm Rick. That's Misty over in the corner. It is a holiday weekend. We are working. I'm currently doing the videos. It is the day before Christmas, Christmas Eve. It's Saturday before Christmas Eve. Anyway, till next time.